Hello and welcome to Moneylife. This is Sucheta Dalal. So, what are we discussing this week? An absolutely strange case that happened on All Fools Day, 1st April. So, there was a notification from a company called IFB Agro to the stock exchanges. And what this notification said was quite stupefying and raises enormous questions on payoffs that are being done through electoral bonds, the silence of industry over what is apparently extortion from this Calcutta-based distillery company called IFB Agro. But let me start at the beginning. Now, the fact that industry in India has to pay protection money to militant groups is not news. It's been going on for 30, 40 years. They pay for the safety of their business and their employees. Political payoffs, we all know we have high levels of corruption. People are paying tax officials, people are paying for excise, people pay when they break a traffic signal. We are all used to it. So, what is the big news about what happened with IFB Agro Calcutta? Well, what happened is that this company has done something which is dangerously significant. And I say dangerously because it has big implications for how businesses run in India. It has formalized political payoffs by way of subscription to electoral bonds in order to avoid what it sees as extortion by the state excise department and political harassment. So on 1st April, it notified stock exchanges that its board of directors had said that in the interest of all stakeholders and the company, it had approved a contribution of 40 crores through subscription to what are supposed to be anonymous electoral bonds for the years 2022-23. More importantly, it pointed out that this was in connection with its earlier letters in continuation, as it says, about excise-related issues faced by the company, and that its decision about political contribution had a clear link. Makes no bones about it. We are showing you the letter out here. Take a read. Now, in West Bengal, where IFB Agro operates, politically powerful syndicates, as they're called, dictate almost every business activity, including hiring of staff, contractors, suppliers. These syndicates collect regular money. Even if you're building your own home, they would dictate where you buy your cement and labor from. The problem is not limited to West Bengal. Even today, in parts of Maharashtra, which is supposed to be a developed state, you have to buy protection. Industry has to buy protection from Maoist groups. And these are regular clockwork payments, and it keeps their employees safe and keeps business running. In the 90s, especially the late 90s and even later, tea estates in the northeast had to make regular ransom payments. There was constant kidnapping of tea estate employees, and money was paid to release them, or money was paid on a regular basis to avoid murders and kidnapping. It was considered the cost of doing business. We don't like it, but that's how it was. We lived with it. The reason why this happens is people want to do business and the government is not able to afford protection. Not only does the government not give the protection that it's supposed to every tax-paying citizen and certainly to business, but it has no hesitation to get on to the righteous high moral ground and blame industry for making payments when something goes wrong. There was headline-making news, in fact, it was daily front-page news in the late 90s, where the Tata Group was accused of having paid hospital bills to a member of the militant United Liberation Front of Assam, ULFA as it's called, accused of sheltering a militant leader. 3 of Tata employees were arrested by the Assam police. It went up to the highest offices in India. There were tapes leaked, and then everything just slowly fizzled off because, as everyone knows, it was a failure of the state to provide protection. Now, when it comes to IFB Agro, we may sympathize with its predicament because the situation it finds itself in is quite bizarre. But what I don't understand is complete silence from government, from regulators, investigation agencies. Remember, the exchanges as well as the Securities and Exchange Board of India, Ministry of Corporate Affairs have all seen these notifications, and they are pretending that it hasn't happened, that it's an April Fool joke. Even chambers of commerce and industry are silent because, believe me, it can happen to them, and it may not be limited to West Bengal. IFB Agro's disclosure appears to legitimize payment of protection money, and this will be now paid through anonymous electoral bonds. So pay up or we will harass you seems to be the message this time from West Bengal. Will it remain in that state or will it go all over is something that we need to watch. Now let's look at a contrast. In the US, they have what is called the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. It was passed in 1977, makes it a crime to make or authorize any payments to foreign officials, politicians with the corrupt intent of influencing decisions. Now, we laugh about it and say there's plenty of corruption in the US. They have an act for payments abroad, but this usually catches a lot of wrongdoing. We in India are going in the opposite direction. We are legitimizing payments through official anonymous electoral bonds. We're saying it's okay to make them to avoid harassment, and you can disclose this in your accounts book and to the stock exchanges, which apparently have a code of good governance. Now, if this is legitimate, then why don't we just throw out these codes of corporate governance as just so much of red tape? What is the point in this disclosure? So it should be no surprise if more and more large companies say, hey, this is a good way, let's start doing it. So you can have, hypothetically, one company which says bank accounts has been suspended and all its business activities stopped because of a tax demand and because some of the payments which may have been dodgy have been disallowed by the tax department. So second notification saying, well, because all this is happening, in order to make it go away without making those direct links, we are going to subscribe to electoral bonds worth 100 crore. Who will they go to? Not said over here, but obviously to whichever party is in power. Depending on what kind of tax and what kind of harassment, it will go to the state or to the center. Or you can say, a company may say, well, we've been failing to win bids on major infrastructure projects, even though we qualify on technical and even financially. So we want things to work for us. So in continuation of our earlier disclosure that we never win bids, we're going to make a contribution of XYZ amount, say 200 crores to political parties, and hello, you're suddenly qualified. Is this the country that we want? Do we want a formal disclosure of bonds which are paid like bribe money or extortion or ransom? Isn't it stunning that the MCA and the Securities Exchange Board of India hasn't said a word, and the stock exchanges have just taken note of this without any further comment? But let's look at IFB Agro more closely. Why has it been forced to do this? Now, its disclosure does not mention a political party, but it's all in the juxtaposition. We were harassed. Second, in view of the above, we made the payment. So clearly under duress on account of an ongoing issue. Does this really square with its own code of ethics, which says it operates its business at the highest level of business ethics? I'm sure it justifies, its board justifies to itself that we have made a clean, transparent payment in electoral bonds rather than cash under the table. Itself shows our ethics. Let's look at the chronology also. This is not new. It started in 2020. So on 26 June 2020 and again on 22nd December 2020, IFB had made similar disclosures to the stock exchanges. It said it has its distillery in South 24 Parganas, which was attacked by 150 armed goons. Its annual report said they forced the closure of the distillery, beat up employees, held them as hostage. Despite complaints to the police, the distillery which was closed down, reopened, but none of the key offenders who were named were brought to book. It also said that its alcohol business has been suffering because it was singled out by certain excise officials for not succumbing to illegal demands. It has been fighting them. Now, company does business or it keeps fighting illegal demands. Clearly, IFB Agro thinks that it's doing no wrong. It raised this issue, it's gone public, it's gone to the chief minister. In fact, the West Bengal governor had called for a deeper probe into such nefarious activities, as he called them. This was reported in the papers in June 2020, and yet nothing came out of it. Zero. Then on 7th October, IFB again disclosed that its board of directors had decided that it was in the interest of the company to make a payment. So the previous year, when all this happened, it had paid 25. It had subscribed to electoral bonds worth 25 crores for the years 21-22. Now it says it's going to increase this to 40 crore, which is the 1st April notification. Like I said, it's completely transparent. Everything has been disclosed in its annual report. How do we view this? While one is increasingly hearing about corporate India being arm twisted by politicians to use mandatory corporate social responsibility funds, this is 2% of net profit. We at Moneylife, even though we run an NGO which could be a beneficiary, have been completely against mandatory CSR. But remember, that is only 2% of net profit. In IFB Agro's case, the amount paid or subscribed to is 40 crore. Its profit for the year ended 31st March 2021 was 47 crore. That means it's equal to almost its entire profit after tax. This is huge money. And how is business supposed to survive? Now, IFB Agro may be managing in spite of it. It's done better this year. But if the same demand is going to be made to all companies who are not in a position to suck out cash from the system and make payoffs, then it's serious extortion. Since IFB Agro's problems relate to West Bengal, one would have assumed that the union government in the center would have made a noise about it and gained political mileage. But guess again, just 2 days ago, the Association of Democratic Reforms has released data. This is an advocacy body, which is the one which went to court and made sure that you have declarations of accounts as well as affidavits signed by our parliamentarians, elected members of parliament. So what does it say? It says that the Bharatiya Janata Party, which is at the center, is the biggest beneficiary of electoral bonds. The amount that it has collected, first of all, the money raised through these bonds has gone up 143% since 2012. The amount collected is a massive 921.95 crores in FY 1920. BJP's share of this is 720 crore. That means a bulk of it goes to the BJP. So obviously it doesn't want to upset the apple cart, doesn't want transparency about electoral bonds, doesn't want to question it. So there is complete silence from the central government. The state government in any case is getting the money obviously. So it doesn't want to talk. Business and industry, if you ask me, ought to rally around IFB Agro because I'm sure they face similar threats. And if they keep quiet, they may face similar threats from other states. In fact, forget about ease of doing business, where we were celebrating the fact that we went up several times in the ranking. This high and illegal cost of doing business will have a debilitating impact on India's economy and on employment generation. Remember, it is the private sector, not the government, which is the largest employer in this country. Indeed, extortion rackets run by ruling party politicians, even before the current dispensation in West Bengal, has since the 70s been running these extortion rackets, and that is primarily responsible for the slow, steady and continuous decline of West Bengal, which at one time was one of the most prosperous states in India. We will have other states going that way. You already have a comparison with what happens with freebies in Sri Lanka. Extortion from the private sector businesses which are providing employment, which are providing salaries to people, will take India downhill. Those of us who are hearing this ought to spread the message, ought to be concerned, ought to raise our voice. If you agree, please share and subscribe to Moneylife News Bites. Thank you.